Thanks a lot. How you guys doing? Can everybody hear me okay? Is the mic on?
Yeah, you're on.
Cool, good. So yeah, as I was just introduced, I'm the CEO and founder of Cashplay. We're a company that does cash tournaments inside of skill games. So we allow companies to monetize in kind of a more engaging way than, let's say, traditional methods such as advertising and premium upgrades. I'm over here from the Czech Republic. I've been living in Prague for the last 18 years. And before I start, I want to say to all of you Breaking Bad fans that it is not true that 20% of our population is on methamphetamine. We are quite intense, and we do have a good time, but I have to say it's not true. So I'm also up here to dispel some other myths while I'm speaking. And obviously, I think a lot of us are here for kind of an education on monetization, things that are going on, things that might be possible to make our games a little bit more engaging. And I hope I can do that for you. Before I get started, let me ask, just by a show of hands, how many of you guys are actually in the process of developing games right now? Awesome. Wow, that's great. That's great. I do one of these pretty much every other week, and sometimes you get absolutely nobody, but it seems like everybody's pretty much right on the edge of where you're supposed to be for looking at game monetization. Out of you guys, how many feel like you have a really strong game monetization plan? Okay, that's about 10%. That's awesome. That's awesome. I believe that somebody down here had a hand up. Yeah. Should you just give me like 3 words? What is your plan? Or more, as much as you want.
Well, we track. We do a lot of tracking and making sure that the game loops are engaging. And so we look at our retention numbers and we look at where the pinch points are, and making sure that in the game design we put in the efforts to monetize certain places.
Cool. Is that free to, is it fair to say that you guys are working on a kind of a free-to-play upgrade model? Okay, cool. That works really well for some companies. Companies who know what they're doing. And is anybody out here operating a kind of a more advertising-based model? Anyone? A couple of groups? Okay, cool. This is one of my favorite numbers. I'm a pilot, and it's interesting for me because obviously I'm very interested in survival. This is a great statistic. You're 475 times more likely to survive a plane crash than you are to actually click on a banner ad. Show of hands, has anybody here actually intentionally ever clicked on a banner ad in a mobile game? Really? One person, that's great. You're going to do very well on your next flight as well. Somebody very safe in the room. The reason why these things don't work is basically because they're annoying. And what we want to basically point out is you don't have to be annoying in your monetization techniques. You can actually engage your audience. You can make things a lot more interesting for them if you use alternative, more, let's say, innovative and more modern monetization techniques. That can work alongside what you guys have normally been looking at with your freemium, upgrade models and your advertising models if you do want to use those. As I say, we operate cash tournaments, and the reason why we got into cash tournaments for skill games is that we used to have a regulated gambling website. We're based abroad, and we're in a territory where it's legal as long as you have a license. So we went through a long process, built a great back end, allowing people to bet against each other on sports events in a very social environment. And what we found was that very quickly, after we launched, there was too much latency between the time of somebody making a bet, somebody else coming in and matching that bet, and then the actual sports event taking place. So we needed to go out and we needed to do something to fill people's time, to make things more engaging, and obviously keep them on the site and form that habit, if you will. The first protocol we went to was games and game developers, and we spent a lot of time basically going out and talking to some top-end game developers. We were very successful in breaking down some doors. And it became obvious to us that it wasn't really important for these guys to put their game on another platform. They had users. They had plenty of users. In some cases, they had more users than they knew what to do with, it seemed like. But the problem they had is that they weren't monetizing these users, and I think that's why we're all here today. And it was a very obvious thing to us in the industry. Well, why would we make them put their users on our website when they can just as easily plug in our SDK in the back end and monetize the users they already have in the place where they already reside. So when we started looking at this and we started approaching the core developers that we went with in the very first rounds, this is about 14 months ago now, we had some really good successes on the developer side. Then we went out to users and we started doing a lot of user research. We found some excellent engagement, and in our test cases over the last year, we've done really well. Of course, we've launched a number of live games over the last few months as well. I don't think this is going to, here we go. There we go. So, I think everybody knows this. It's very difficult to make money in gaming. If you know what you're doing, you can do very well. And you have to make sure that if you're getting into gaming, that you're doing it, and if you're doing it to make money. This is very important, because some people just do it because they love games, and they think, oh, I'll make money eventually. You have to look at it like this. You have a very poor chance, unfortunately, of making money. And if you do want to make money, you have to hope that you make enough money to survive. I think, at least in my company, these kinds of figures will not actually feed us. In fact, they wouldn't get us through a couple of days, unfortunately. And the result is this: 59% of apps don't generate enough revenue to break even. This is overall in all apps, but I believe it's probably very similar or worse in gaming. It's a bleak picture. And I think the reason for this is that a lot of groups go out there, as I say, they're quite passionate about games. They're quite passionate about game designs. They have great games. They make amazing, amazing games that are very entertaining. But unfortunately, they haven't looked at the monetization mechanics early enough in the process to make sure that they actually have the considerations that you've already put in place, or you guys are looking to put in place, so to make sure that the games are engaging enough. Couple things that I want to do is in terms of, before I go into cash games, is just talk about the highlights and lowlights of what's happening in traditional, outside of premium, of course. We all know what's happening in premium gaming. But with your advertising and your freemium models, I think that there's some very obvious wins and loses that you're going to have when you use these models. First of all, if you're an indie game developer, if you're just starting up a game, you go out, you build a game, you think you have a great title, you develop it, you push it out there, you're really proud of your product. And you might have a great product, but you find very easily and very quickly that it's hard to get users. That's the first thing. If you're lucky enough to get users, then you have to actually monetize these guys in some way so you can actually afford to continue to make the game better. And so what a lot of indie guys do is the first thing they turn to is the most simple aspect, simplest way to make money is to get some advertising out there. There's a lot of advertising companies that'll help you make your game money by plugging in some banner ads and some interstitials and things like this, so you can actually feel really good about the fact that you're generating some income on your game. And you can generate some revenue really quickly, which is great. I think that's a real win for everybody. Everybody's happy about that over the first month of their game. However, ads suck. They annoy people and they cause what I call game pollution. Game pollution is something that pollutes your revenue streams and basically kills all the fish in your pool. You don't want to do that. Most importantly, successful ads actually take attention away from your game, and there's a myth in the industry that it's perfectly okay to actually divert people's attention and still retain them as a user. But every time you divert somebody's attention, I can tell you this because I have ADD, there's a good chance that they will leave and do something else for a while at least, and then you don't have them doing what you want them to do. As well, for most games, and this is not true for everybody, but for most games, long-term revenues are not that great. So you can have a short-term win, and that's great for you. But if you're looking at your long-term strategy, you're not going to be too successful relying only on ads. And you can see that's obvious in this room. A lot of people are not relying on ads. Freemium, you get the balance right. You're going to make millions. That's great. Proper implementation actually adds the stickiness of your game. I think if you look at a game like Candy Crush, which I still can't comprehend how it makes so much money, but it does because it gets to people's psyche. It actually plays with their basal ganglia, and it's addictive, and it works in the right way. And it's very important that you actually understand how you make the game sticky. But it's difficult to do. You actually have to become not a game developer, but you have to become an analytical company. You actually have to have not only the tools, but the right people to understand user behavior. And you have to do this very early in the process, because what you're doing is effectively trading off user experience for a bit of money every time. And it's an interruption in the process, and it's something that can take away from the experience, or if you do it in the right way, which is very rare, as we saw earlier from the income feature or income statistics. If you do it in the right way, you can make a lot of money, but it's very, very difficult, and not a lot of people do it right. Unfortunately, if you do it wrong, you lose your users forever. And this is incredibly important. If you install a game, if you then find that that game is littered with ads, or you have monetization requests every 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is that's not satisfactory for you, you'll uninstall the game and you never get users back. And that's a big loss. I mean, some people say, there's our bottom 5% of users, they're never going to monetize. Maybe that's true, but there's a lot of things you can do with those users, and instead of just drive them away and end up off of their desktop. I'm sorry, their mobile or desktop or wherever else you guys are launching your game from. A few facts about cash tournaments, and I think this is the most impressive we found over the last year. We're finding an ARPU for paying users of $80 to $120, depending on the title, but our racing games and our sports games are doing very well. This is something that compares very favorably with your online casino, where in online casino you actually have much higher acquisition costs. So if you look at this as an alternative, you can do very well in that, trying to find that balance between your cost of acquisition and the amount you're actually going to make on a person. Also as well, obviously, what we found from our early research is that we enhance the user experience. People are actually interested in competing with each other. And our first few games we went out, we tried with some synchronous games. We also tried with some asynchronous multiplayer games. And interestingly, we also went to single-player asynchronous games, which had some success, but they didn't really have the competitive nature outside of maybe a leaderboard or something like this. When we plugged in our tool and we allowed people to compete against each other, even on an asynchronous level, they felt like they were more attached to the game. They actually increased their play sessions, which is obviously something that we want them to do. We found a number of people, a very high number of people over the course of a year who wanted to play for cash, and the conversion rates were very good. Very importantly, cash tournaments are flexible. We work alongside your other monetization methods. Obviously, we're a separate monetization method, but for example, with cash tournaments, one of the things you must do, and I'll talk about the requirements that you have for cash tournaments. One of the things you must do is you must make sure that everybody has a level playing field. So in your game, it must be 100% skill. There can be no random aspects. So if you're in a racing game and your player is going around a second turn and the balloon drops, on level 1, the player who's playing against them must have that exact same experience. So the determination of the winner of the game must be 100% based on skill, at least from a definition perspective as much as possible. But what we found is that if you go to the players and you say to them, okay, we're going to give you 1 or 2 of the premium features that you normally pay for when you're playing in a non-cash session. And because we're making money on you playing in this cash session, we're going to give you these features for free. So on your drag racing car, which, by the way, we just closed a deal with Creative Mobile and their drag racing series, Nitro Nation. So it's huge for us, 140 million downloads so far across the series. What we did is we basically threw in a few things. We've got nitrous upgrade, and we've got, I think, a better transmission. Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm not a real motorhead, so I can't tell you exactly what's in there, but those are the 2 things I remember. But importantly, most importantly, what we found is that people who played in the cash game would then go into the non-cash version of the game to kind of practice, because every time you play in a cash game, you put in a little bit of money. And when they practiced, of course, they didn't have access to these things. So what did they do? They were much more likely to convert over. We found about a 20% increase in the people actually converting over for their premium requirements in order so that they could practice on the level that they wanted to for cash tournaments. So it was very complementary to that, and that was kind of a surprising result that we didn't expect at all, and it's kind of nice, obviously, for people who rely on the freemium model. As well, it's easy to implement for our SDK. It takes about 2 days. Of course, if you want to customize, it can take a while longer. But it's important that for the core, for very let's say startup groups or smaller teams, you can get this done quite quickly and easily. There are things you need to look out for with cash tournaments. Very importantly, in our tournaments, in the games we supply our service to, we are not doing anything with gambling. We are not a gambling company. We do not handle casino games. We do not handle card games. We do not handle dice games. We handle nothing that has to do with non-skill. And the reason for that is obviously you have to make sure that you're legal. So because of the way we work and because of the structure of our tournaments, we're actually legal in 41 states in the US, and we're legal in all but 11 countries worldwide. And there's a reason for that. Obviously the structure and the way we do things, but as well, the back-end systems that we have lend us to be able to operate in a lot of territories where we normally wouldn't. We went through a long approval process, for instance, with Visa Global, trying to make sure that they were happy to work with us on the level that we needed them to. And a lot of our processes, because we come from the online regulated gaming background, they found to be well above what they expected in a skill gaming company, and they therefore approved us. So we've done the same thing now with Apple, where I spent a few hours on Wednesday afternoon. It was a nice tour of their campus. They actually called us, they brought us in, and we had a nice conversation with them, and we're fully approved for their systems as well, which is great. It's something that we didn't expect, and obviously it's a great turnout for us to be able to operate globally on iOS. If you do want to operate cash tournaments, it's important that you handle a few things. First of all, cheating. Especially in mobile, cheating is incredibly important. If you go out and you look if you search the internet for any game, you'll find that there's all sorts of cheats out there, ways to get around playing games, and it's important that you have a cheating system built in yourself.